Let me start by saying that people buy because they like you and trust you. That's the most important part of a sale, and that's often the most overlooked. People buy because they like you and trust you. Therefore, it's important for you at the beginning of a sale to establish a relationship with your prospect. And the easiest way to establish a personal relationship with your prospect is to start the presentation with these words. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. And proceed to tell them about you. Tell them about your background, your family, how long you've been working in this area, how long you've been living in the community, some of the things you do. Tell them about your children. Tell them anything that will make you personal and make you someone with whom they'll have empathy. And once you establish a personal relationship, you've taken the first step toward a successful sale, because people buy because they like you and trust you. Once you establish a relationship with people and are able to go forward with a sales presentation, the most important part of that sales presentation is knowing when to close. Not knowing how to close, knowing when to close. And this is something that's most often overlooked by salespeople based on my own personal experience. Most salespeople think that the trial close is asking some sort of a small decision, like do you want black or white or black or yellow? Do you prefer to pay annually, or is monthly more convenient for you? These are decisions, and people don't like to make decisions. And oftentimes you're going to ask for these mini decisions at the wrong time and turn your prospect off. So the key to closing is knowing when to close. And knowing when to close is very much like taking the temperature of a piece of meat to know when it's properly cooked. You need to take the temperature of your prospect. To do that, ask an opinion question, an opinion asking question. For example, you've gone through your presentation, and now you want to say something to your prospect like, Jack, Mary, in your opinion, do you feel that long-term care insurance seems to make sense for you? And perhaps John and Mary will say something like, yes, it does, and I think it's something we want to do. In that situation, you've taken their temperature and they've come up hot. And now you can proceed to show them a premium or show them a plan and close the sale. And this does happen in the real world, and it happens on a regular basis. But more often than not, what's going to happen is you're going to say to your prospect, John, Mary, in your opinion, do you feel that long-term care insurance makes sense for you? And they're going to become skittish and nervous, and perhaps they'll respond with, well, we're not ready to buy anything right now. To which you should reply calmly, nicely, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't asking you to make a decision. I was asking you your opinion. In your opinion, do you feel that long-term care insurance makes sense based on what we've just discussed? At this point, they're going to come up with an objection. In all probability, they're going to say, well, I'm not really sure. You've given me a lot to think about. I want to think it over. Or they're going to say something like, well, I really don't make any decisions of this nature without discussing it with our children, because they're an important part of our decision-making process. Or, my brother-in-law is an insurance agent. They're going to hit you with a zillion different possible objections. Most of them are not real. Again, most of them are not real. They are smoke screens being put forward by a prospect to prevent themselves from buying. Now, if you know that, then there's no reason for you to deal with that kind of an objection. There's no reason for you to even discuss it. So when they say to you, I just don't know because I want to think it over, you very calmly respond by giving them credit for making an intelligent observation or an intelligent conclusion, and ask them permission to ask them why they made that decision. So what you'd say would be something like this. In your opinion, do you feel that this makes sense for you? Well, I'm not really sure because I think I want to think about this for a while. I want to sleep on it. Gee, obviously you have some reason for saying that. Do you mind if I ask what it is? No, I don't mind. Well, what is it? Well, I like to discuss these kinds of things with our two sons before we make a decision. Okay, they've given you a reason. Now, before you start talking about their two sons, let's find out if it's real. And the way you find out if it's real is by meeting the condition exactly. And you do that as follows. Well, I want to discuss that with our two sons before we move further. Just suppose for the moment you didn't want to discuss it with your sons. Then, in your opinion, do you think it would make sense? Remember, you asked them an opinion to take their temperature, and they haven't answered your question yet. They haven't given you their opinion. What they've done is said they want to talk it over with their sons. So let's just meet the condition and restate the question. Obviously, you have a reason for saying that. Do you mind if I ask what it is? No, I don't mind. Well, what is it? I want to discuss it with our boys before we make a decision. Just suppose for the moment you didn't want to discuss it with them. Then, in your opinion, would it make sense? Well, yeah, I guess it would, but, you know, we've got so many expenses coming up. It's the holiday season, and you know, funds are real tight, and we're not getting very good money on our investments right now. Ooh, obviously you have some other reason then for hesitating. Do you mind if I ask what that is? Well, to be real honest with you, Mary's brother is an insurance agent. I think I want to run this by him before we make any decision. I can understand that. But just suppose for the moment you didn't want to discuss it with him, that you felt confident in dealing with me. Then, in your opinion, would this make sense for you? Well, Jeff, you know, I guess it would, but I don't know. I just don't see either of us needing long-term care in the future. Well, just suppose for the moment you did see yourself needing care. Then, in your opinion, would it make sense? Well, sure, I guess if we needed care, but I just don't see it. Okay. What happened to all the other objections? Did I overcome them? Did I answer them? No. And where'd they go? They disappeared into smoke because they were never real to begin with. The only one that was real, the only objection that mattered, was that they didn't see a need for the insurance because they didn't see themselves as someday needing long-term care. You can put any product you want in here. The result is the same. Unless the product can be seen by the insured as solving a problem, you're not going to make a sale. So, don't deal with objections that don't exist. But now, what do we do with the one that's real? Well, you probably have heard that a salesman should learn to overcome objections. Folks, you cannot overcome an objection. You cannot make an objection disappear if it's real. But what you can do is minimize the impact. And you minimize the impact of an objection by getting the insured, the prospect, the individual you're trying to sell, to recognize that maybe it's not an objection, it's a question. So you want to turn the objection into a question. How do you do it? This technique. Well, yeah, I guess it would make sense, but I just don't see the need. I just don't see us needing long-term care. I can understand that, John. You know, others have said that to me too. But you know, that brings up a question. And the question is whether or not you'll benefit by owning long-term care insurance despite your concern. Isn't that the question? If John says yes, that's the question, then you respond by going back to your selling system and trying to show him the need, trying to show him that there's a serious risk of him someday needing long-term care or his wife needing long-term care, and that the cost of that care will be so prohibitive that long-term care insurance really does make sense. That's the first way you approach it. But suppose John says, no, that's not the question. Then you respond, what is the question? And he will invariably and unconsciously respond with, the question is, and then he'll state what his concern is. What's important is not what he states. What's important is that he will say to you, the question is, I don't see myself ever being in a nursing home. To which you'd respond, oh, the question is whether or not you'll ever be in a nursing home. And then he'll probably say, yeah, I just don't see it happening. So in other words, the question's whether or not you'll need care in some sort of an institutional setting. Yeah. Okay. The question is, he has turned in his own mind his objection into a question. And if a prospect has a question, as a salesperson, you have a responsibility and an obligation to answer it. And if you answer his question successfully, guess what? You will make the sale. So number one, don't panic when you hear an objection. An objection is not an objection. An objection is a concern. And more importantly, if you do it right, an objection is nothing more than a question that a prospect has for you. So good luck, and I know you'll be successful using this technique.